Let me pick up on North Korea. I'll ask you a question that was sent to me by a source in the middle of the country who sent me a note and just said, are we going to war with North Korea?
I hope not. Obviously, we have to ask ourselves a very fundamental question, and that is it acceptable? Can we live in a world where Kim Jong-un possesses not just nuclear weapons, but the ability to deliver those weapons against the continental United States? Can we live in a world like that? If the answer is yes, then I suppose that, there's all sorts of things we would not do. If the answer is no, then the options, and the answer is no for me, then the options before you are truly quite limited, and none of them are good. I mean, none of those options are good. But it is my view at the end of the day that we must do almost whatever it takes, just about anything, to prevent Kim Jong-un from acquiring a nuclear capability he can deliver against the mainland of the United States of America.
So what is the end game there, Senator? Is that removing all missiles? I mean, what would be the best possible outcome?
Well, I think the best possible outcome would be that he walks away from his long-range missile program. We already know he has nuclear weapons. The issue here is, can he put it on a rocket and send it and hit the state of California, Arizona, the middle of the country where you got that email from, and potentially Washington, D.C.? That is an unacceptable risk. That cannot happen. And so the end game and the ideal one in terms of this showdown would be that he walks away from the long-range missile program. If he continues to test them, if he continues to make progress in that direction, then we've got a big problem.
Senator, is the ratcheting up of conversation about North Korea that's taken place over the last several weeks, is that merely because of the rhetoric and then obviously the missile test in North Korea, or as you understand it, is North Korea closer to that intercontinental ballistic missile?
Well, there's no doubt they're closer and continue to get closer. Now, you've seen some spectacular failures on their launches, but that's always a part of moving forward. Look, possessing a long-range missile is not technologically prohibitive for most countries in the world who are willing to dedicate the resources they're dedicating to it. You have to understand that people of North Korea are starving to death. There are literally people starving to death in North Korea. That government is putting virtually every dollar they have left over into the development of these long-range missiles. And so ultimately, if they want a long-range missile and continue unabated, and we do nothing about it, they will acquire that capability. They potentially have some of that capability now. And so ultimately, this is not something that's prohibitive. And by the way, it's one of my big concerns about Iran as well. They will follow the same track.
Let me ask you about President Trump. You had considerable reservations about his ability to handle this kind of an issue when you were a candidate. Do you have faith now on this sensitive and tricky issue that the president can handle it?
Well, let me just say, first of all, I would never ultimately in a situation as critical as this go out there and deliberately undermine any president. Suffice it to say that I do believe this president has taken this issue of North Korea with the seriousness it deserves. I, quite frankly, congratulate him and commend him for putting people around him that are capable of handling this issue alongside him, giving him good advice. From everything I've heard, and I know some people that were involved in those deliberations, when the president looked at the situation in Syria, they were very impressed with the questions he asked. They were very impressed with his thought process and decision-making process. And that does give me greater confidence that we have a White House and a president who is handling these foreign situations, these national security situations, in the appropriate way.
The president got involved personally in the release of an aid worker who was being held in Egypt. Some people think that, in part, that release was a result of the fact that he was more accommodating towards the president of Egypt, who's been accused of human rights abuses and other things. What's your sense of that tension? That on the one hand, it's productive, but on the other hand, some people think that being too close to the Egyptian president is not a good thing.
Well, look, Egypt is an important country in that region, and we need them to be successful on multiple fronts. My concern with Egypt has been that particular case of Aya Hijaz, where she was released. She was an aid worker. She had been improperly imprisoned and should have been released a long time ago. Now, it sounds and it looks like the president raised the issue privately through back channels and in their meetings, and it ended in a positive result, and he should be congratulated for that. I have ongoing concerns, and my big concern in Egypt is that the way they govern that country now under President al-Sisi is going to lead to some sort of a violent clash and some sort of potential overthrow and a destabilizing change of government, because you cannot treat people this way and sustain it over the long haul. That said, we do need to work with the Egyptian government, hopefully urge them in the right direction, especially long term, but also work with them to secure the Sinai, to be a reliable partner against ISIS, and also to continue to be a reliable partner against Hamas and those that threaten Israel from Gaza. So all of these things are important, and they're not mutually exclusive. And so I think that this is a moment we need to stop and say, whether he did it publicly or privately, the president was successful at getting the release of an American improperly held abroad because he raised the issue and he made it a priority.
He made it a priority, but he also, do you see any tension in the connection there between North Korea has, for example, just taken a U.S. citizen, the third being held in North Korea. Do you think there's any signal that's sent to other countries when an aid worker can be released, but then these human rights abuses people are worried about don't get talked about so much?
Well, I talk about them all the time. It's one of my priorities, and others I wish would talk about them more. But ultimately, the release of this of the aid worker, the American, should not in any way prohibit us from continuing to talk about the other human rights abuses that are occurring in Egypt. There is a difference between Egypt and North Korea. Number one, Egypt is not developing nuclear weapons designed to strike the United States. Number two, Egypt is a partner in the fight against ISIS and the fight against radical jihadists. There's a difference. It's an ally of the United States and a country we interact with. That does not, however, mean that we cannot and should not publicly and privately, as I did with President el-Sisi 3 weeks ago, raise human rights concerns. And we raise them because it's the right thing to do, but we also raise them because it's the right thing to do for him and for Egypt. Otherwise, if you continue to abuse your population, in the long term, there will be an uprising, there will be government instability, and that becomes the environment that breeds jihadists and radicals.
All right, Senator Marco Rubio, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.